And also, please welcome Bartosz.
Hi, welcome.
Louder, please louder. Yeah, thank you.
Right, hello and welcome. Let's get started. So during my talk, I'd like to tell you about optimizing application performance using AT&T Video Optimizer. That's a cool tool for doing that. And so first of all, let's just talk about me. For a while, my name is Bartosz Kraszewski. I work as a software engineer in SoftwareHut. I'm mostly focused on Android applications. And I came here from Białystok, Poland. So it was not that far away. All right, but that's enough about me. Let's just now focus on someone much more important. So that's about you, because I'd like to know you better before my talk. So please raise your hand if you are an Android developer. All right, that's a very good. So we know already that you have a professional interest in Android, and I know that you care about app performance. How do I know that? Because, well, it's a beautiful Saturday. It's almost 5 p.m. You could be doing everything, but yet you are still here in the room with me, so thank you very much for that. And I know that you will be awarded after this session because you will know how to test your application against industry best practices. So why actually performance matters? I prepared a bunch of fun facts that are mostly related to network performance. So first of all, based on our research, user heart rate increases 38% when experiencing mobile content delay. And as you know, increased heart rate means that users have a higher chance to get a serious heart condition and eventually dying. And that customer won't pay your money unless he won't unsubscribe from your credit card. But we are aiming to get a healthy and living users. And that's another fun fact, that about 4% of users actually damaged their phone due to slow app performance. So by doing a math and counting people in this room, that means at least one person did it. So if you are one of those, please raise your hand. Great. This means the audience is calm, so you're not going to throw anything at me. That's very good. And based on Ericsson research, the stress level that user experience during the mobile content delay is compared to actually watching a horror movie or doing really serious hard mathematical problems. And another graph here that's displayed is, it was named standing on a top of a virtual cliff. So that's not a pleasant thing to do. And what's the user reaction to slow or buggy application? We are most likely going to lose our user because they are going to uninstall application. There's a huge chance they are also going to give you bad review, just give you 1-star rating. But luckily, about 15% of users will still use your application. But again, that's not what we are aiming for. We want the whole cake, the whole 100% of the users. And of course, we are programmers, which means we really like to optimize stuff. Let's take a look at this Java code. Sorry for making it in Java, not in Kotlin, but that's actually a very clever code that's copying from one array to another, and it's using the native array copy. It's much faster than normal iterating and setting element. But to be honest, those are only 3 items, so how much speed or CPU cycles we actually saved, in a big picture, maybe it doesn't really matter, because the official guide to optimizing stuff is that don't do this. You just focus on writing code that is clean, concise, simple, and self-explanatory. And after you are done with your code, you are making performance tests to identify your bottlenecks. And then you optimize the critical sections. And the second part is the one I want to be focused during this talk, how to make actual performance testing. And again, during this talk, I'll be mostly focused on network performance, so downloading content from internet and also how it's related to draining user battery. So the tool I recommend for using that is called AT&T Video Optimizer. It was previously known as ARO, Application Resource Optimizer, but it got rebranded by AT&T. And you can use it to test your application against the industry best practices. All that is written down by AT&T, and they handle the network stuff, so they know what they are doing. And it's available for both Android and iOS, but I like to talk about the Android part. And of course, thanks for everything, but application is free and open source. So you can even take a look into GitHub account and see how they are making this. But that's enough about talking. Let's just take application for a test drive. I actually am not brave enough to make a live demo, but I prepared a video of me doing the test. So let's just play it. Not sure what's the quality. All right. The quality is not that bad actually, so we can handle that. That's the main screen of AT&T Video Optimizer. And the second screen is just a preview of my phone, what's happening there. So the main interface actually is just an empty report because application works like that. You start recording session of you using your application, and after that you get information in form of report that telling you if you actually passed or not. All right, to start, you just need to connect your phone with a USB, and then there's an option to just start data collector. After we start, the pop-up will show. The quality here is not good, but I explain what are the options. So we are selecting the device on which we'll be conducting our test. And then it's just a normal phone. Just make sure the debugging is on. And what I noticed, please use real phones, because theoretically you can run it on emulator. But that kind of sucks. It's not stable. It's better to have a real device. And there are options. For example, there is an option to choose. There's an option secure or not. It's available only for a KitKat. On a KitKat Android phone, you are able to encrypt SSL data. And that will give you more information about network traffic. But actually, data with encrypted data is still usable. We can do this for the testing. We can simulate different network profiles. So we can use super fast Wi-Fi. We can use 2G, 3G. So we'll be testing our application in different environments. And during the test, we'll be recording a video. So we just have to choose a quality. A simple 1 FPS is basically enough. All right. What there are options? Yeah. Then we just name our report. And it will be saved on a disk, so make sure, because we sometimes repeat tests, so we have to make sure it's named properly. It's loading. And during this process, the AT&T data collector was installed on your phone. This screen that's barely visible is just asking you to allow the VPN connection, because how the network is actually monitored between your computer and a phone. The actual VPN connection is created, and the whole network stats could be monitored. And be careful if you are using one of the applications that's drawing on top of the UI, for example, like a Twilight, this pop-up won't work. You have to disable it. So that's the one issue I noticed. Okay. And the second video that appeared here is the recorder video that's made during your test. I'll talk about it later. Right, and we are ready to start testing our application. The app I'll be taking for a test drive is Twitter. So, all right. During your testing, it's important to create sessions that between 5 and 20 minutes, and you are just doing everything that's your user doing. Make sure you are downloading data from server, you upload data, you browse pictures, maybe log in, log out, and first we can do this manually, but then you can easily make sure it's running automated. Right, so here we are just browsing images. And as I mentioned, it's also important to check data upload. So we'll be making one simple tweet as a demo. Oh, it's hardly visible. Yeah, so just also in the meantime, we are, yeah, sorry?
Can you please use full-size font?
Okay, sure. Oh, here.
Since it doesn't help us, so.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
No, maybe there's more I can do. Oh, no. All right. So maybe this part, actually what I wanted you to do is that I'll be just using app and then showing a sample report. I have this link and I upload it on YouTube and also post it on a Twitter with a proper hashtag, so you can take a look how to use application. But mostly, to be honest, application is really straightforward because what you really want is a start session and then we are browsing a report. So maybe I can quickly show how this report looks. I think it's somewhere. Okay. All right, that's the stopped section. And the full report contains about 30 subjects, better explained in best practices. And in my rest of the presentation, I picked the sample 6 I'll be talking about. So don't worry if it's not visible here. All right. I wanted to show you this diagnostic tab. It's hardly visible, but on the next slides, I'll have more zoom detail. But what this screen is showing, those are cool metrics that could be very useful during the testing, because there's a CPU state, there's a GPS state, Bluetooth, CPU temperature, and the network-related stuff. So actual network throughput and the radio state. All right. Yeah, that's also one part that I wanted to share, because when you see all this timeline, this whole data looks like an actual timeline. And if you click at some time, you can see on a video preview what you are doing here. So you see, for example, CPU metric that is showing that, for example, you have a spike of CPU usage and you ever wondered why it happens. You just click and see what happened then on the screen. All right, so I'll skip that part. All right, so let's now talk about the testing report, what we already see. So it's, as I mentioned, it's already a 30 section, and it's related to file download, network usage, video streaming, if your application is streaming content, displaying pictures. And I decided to talk about those sections. Of course, not everything, but because it would take too long. But let's see what we got here. And also, I'm not sure if you are familiar with a website called HTTP status codes. And this is exactly how I learned all the status codes meaning. Because there's a website that's showing actual status code with funny explanations with the cat pictures. And by using this, I really quickly got familiar with that. And I believe that could help us. So the first problem I'd like to tell is text file compression. And compression we are using when we connect to APIs. We download data in JSONs, XMLs files. And AT&T Video Optimizer can show you if you are properly compressing your files. Because the text is very good for compressing. After compression, you save about 60% of the space, and all that could be a wasted bandwidth. And how to fix that? Just make sure your server enabled gzip param, and in your client application, you just have to set header. That means use text compression. Another issue is duplicated content, because during your testing sessions, all the files are listed. And after very end, you got actual list of content that was downloaded twice or more. If you take a look at this report, you will know that, hey, I have a problem here. This image was downloaded a couple of times, so I need to work better on your caching system. Another problem that you may happen is displaying too big images. And when I talk about resizing images, it's not about client resize. Because if you resize your item before moving to image view, you still downloaded the huge image over the internet. And if you have thumbnails or user avatars that are small, there is no need to download a bigger picture. And how can we deal with that? And I think it's a best job for a backend. So you need to talk with your backend people, and if you are using image provider, for example, Google, there's usually a support for a size parameter. And if you just mentioned here, I want a picture that big. And this tool will give you, I think, about 20% of margin, so you don't have to be a pixel perfect. So just make sure you are using the proper size. Another issue you are likely to have is having unnecessary connections. And this could actually affect user battery drain. And what you need to have is always make sure that your connections are grouped very tight and happens during this period of time. Let's look at example. This is how the mobile radio works. It's a state machine with 3 modes. First, the orange is full power when it's using maximum of energy, and it's used for downloading data. Also, there is a second state. It's called low power. And during this time, data is not downloading, but radio is still ready. So it means I'm going to download something soon. And the green one is a standby when energy is not consumed. So in this part, we are not actually using user battery. That's a sample of graph showing your connection that was made by AT&T ARO. And as we can see, we have 3 requests, but they are separated in time. And this could be avoided because every time there's a delay between changing a state. So if we could make it on the very beginning, we download all the data up front, the application won't have to change this state so often. If you are familiar with Google developers on YouTube, there's a great channel for it. They call it a big cookie model, which means that when starting your application, you are asking server for as much data as possible up front. Of course, with a limit, not so megabytes of data, but you can try to predict a first move of a user, know what will be needed, cache it, and make sure application is offline friendly. Another problem here is closing connections. We can see on this graph that we already grouped the connections, and they are very good. So the radio is not changing state when not necessary. But after we finished, we didn't close the connection. And this blue dot here is just a server timeout. We need to be aware that every time a server makes you timeout, for you is a similar situation to downloading some data. So application will go through all these states, and you need to, and the energy will be wasted. And how can we make that? We just need to make sure that after we don't need connection, it's closed. But sometimes we are working in a model when we have a connection pool and we keep some connections for reuse. You need to specify what are the moments when there will be a big break, when no more connections will be done, and then just close the connection. Of course, it's common that we show some web content. In our application, we can have a web view that's showing HTML, JS, CSS files, and this traffic will be monitored too. And after the data is monitored, the AT&T Video Optimizer will tell you that you have a problem that, for example, JavaScript files or CSS are not minimized. We'll tell you exactly how much kilobytes you can save and how much potential app speedup you can gain. Another cool tip is, I think, using CSS sprites. CSS sprite is when all the images from web content are just moved into one big picture and downloaded only once, instead of making tons of requests. And another potential issue is loading JavaScript files asynchronously. So if you include some JavaScript file, it's not on the end of a body, but it's between the headers. This means that the file could be downloaded later, and it's no need to wait until the whole content of a page is processed. Okay, but can we test more? As I mentioned, the full report contains about 30 sections, and it's, for example, contain security tips. Optimizer will tell you if you're using HTTPS and if you're using proper SSL version. And of course, we'll test your ciphers if they are safe enough. If you are streaming video, application will also let you know that you're making it correct. There's a big section about 8 points to test. And during the, we can also take a look to the cool metrics, which are, for example, the GPS state. If application use GPS a lot and there is not available connection, if user is, for example, in a big beton bunker, something similar here, you will see that application is making too much requests and we are potentially draining a battery. There's information about CPU usage and temperature. And the good thing is that if you see spike, you can click on it and see what's actually happening on screen. So what's the result? You can see also the network state, if it's currently using a Wi-Fi or if it's not available at all. And the wake locks. Wake locks also could be a problem that make user battery goes down very quickly. So during the test, you will see on the timeline when the wake lock was acquired and if it was released. Okay, so to sum up and how to make it in one sentence, we just have to test our application and test it regularly, make sure we are working on this network bottlenecks, and as the result, user heart rate will be great again. Thank you. Here's the actual link to the best practices. that contains these 30 sections that I mentioned. And I think it's kind of hard reading because it's a really technical language, but I think it's really important for mobile developers to take a look at this. All right, now questions.
Yeah, sure. Please raise your hands and I'll pass the microphone to you. Anyone? Okay, let's say that everyone.
There's one.
Yeah.
Did you somehow compare it to the native performance analyzer?
Performance analyzer, which is this embedded in Android Studio.
Let's take this one, for example.
I'm using it. For example, mostly I'm tracing. I'm using the profiler part and using the trace. But only problem I noticed is it's mostly focused on actual CPU performance, and the AT&T tool is mostly focused on network and battery state. So as a it's hard to compare it each one to another because they are kind of different. So I think it will be nice if you are using both of them. Just take a look, just for a while, if you didn't break anything significant.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? There's no. Let's say then. Thank you one more time to Bartosz.